Okay, now I'd like to talk a little bit about choosing dye colors. This is almost paralyzing. You have to kind of figure out how deep you're going to get into this. If you you can order these dye color charts, so they're little swatches of yarn dyed at pretty strong strengths of concentration, and so it's hard to see the pale shades unless you are good at envisioning what the color would look like watered down. But these are Prochem dyes. They're sold under different names sometimes. This was G&K Craft Industries, but it's all Prochem dyes. So you can choose a color you like, and then say the Lollipop Red, which I don't think is on this because this is kind of old. So the Lollipop Red can give you lots of shades. Then you can also mix it with black and get even more shades. Instead of just the values from intense red down to the pale, you now have black down to less black. So the top row has, it's a 0.5% DOS, which is the same as this one. There's no black in it. Now the next one, they've used the same intensity, so this same shade of red now has a wee bit of black, more black, even more black, and so on. So this is no black, 96% red, 4% black, 90% red, 10% black, and you kind of get the idea. So with that one shade, you can explore values this way, and then values, or the same value, but with black, or the same intensity of dye. So these are all done at 0.5% depth of shade. This one is 0.5 depth of shade, but then these are less quantities of dye stock solution. These all have the same amount of dye stock solution in them. It's just that the dye stock is not entirely red. It's got some black mixed into it. So it's a complicated way of thinking, but once you get it, it's pretty straightforward. And the percentages are listed there, which help to explain it. So if you think about it, like if it's, it could be, say, 50% of the Lollipop Red and 50% of the black, and you're going to be somewhere in this shade. This is a 40-60 blend. But if your recipe called for 40 milliliters of dye, for the quantity of yarn you're going to dye at the depth of shade, the depth of color that you plan to dye, you can just take the milliliters needed by looking at that chart and make a stock solution, or make a solution from your 1% stock solution that consists of 50% red and 50% black. I hope this isn't too mathematical, but it's pretty easy once you put it on paper and see the logic. Okay, now I'm going to talk about choosing dye colors to stock so you can dye yarn. You can start by purchasing black and 3 primary colors and experiment with that. You could buy black primary and secondary colors and use those for experimenting. You definitely have to buy black. And then along with black, you could choose just to purchase some colors that you like to work with, that you would be interested in dyeing. And then you can make shades of values of that color, going from the pure color and then diluted with black and making different intensities of that color. So here's some swatches that are using 3 primary colors For the yellow, they're using orange peel. For the red, it's Lollipop Red. And for the blue, it's Imperial Blue. And all of these are at the same depth of shade, which is 1%, which is that 100 milliliters of dye to 100 grams of yarn equal 1% stock solution, 1% depth of shade, saturation of color. So if you were doing this, you could make a paler shades of these and explore that route. But I would say if you really want to get into this and spend a lot of time experimenting, this could be fun for you. If it doesn't sound that fun and you just want to make some yarn colors you like, I would suggest just picking a color you like and playing with adding black to it. This is just Lollipop Red on its own at a 0.5% depth of shade. Here it is at the 1% depth of shade, so it's half as dark as this one. And then to this depth of shade of 0.5%, a little bit of black has been added until at the end here it's all black with no Lollipop Red. So that's one way to experiment with your colors, by just adding black to a color you picked out. Another way would be to combine colors. So this is sort of like doing the color wheel, but it's just showing you what different shades of the primaries look like when they're combined in different amounts. So the top row uses sun yellow, magenta, and turquoise for the primary colors. The middle row uses sun yellow, magenta, and brilliant blue for the primary colors. And the bottom row is golden yellow, magenta, and brilliant blue. So you can really see a difference in the primaries that you choose to work with. Here you got a rusty color, and this is more brown. This one has more of a bluish look, while this set of primaries is more plum. So that's a route to explore, but you're gonna use up a lot of your experimental time doing that. So I would suggest working with one color and then playing around with the depth of shades. So choosing one color like the Lollipop Red, adding black to it, then making lighter and darker saturations of that, or lighter depth of shades. And then if you just want to use a pure color without the black, you can do this, or you could combine things like, say, well, this Lollipop Red mixed with the National Blue, and see what shades of purple you might get with that. Although the Lollipop Red looks to me like it's got some yellow in it, so it might be a brownish purple. That's something to consider. But there's almost a paralyzing amount of choices here that you could make, which makes it fun, but sometimes a bit overwhelming. Okay, here are some yarns that I've dyed, and I thought they might help to explain things. This is a 1% depth of shade of National Blue. So it's just the straight National Blue from ProChem. Here it is with a depth of shade of 0.1%. So it's a lot lighter in value. Same dye powder, just less dye stock solution to the same amount of yarn, and you get a paler shade. Now, if this is still a little bright and you want to see what it looks like toned down, Here is a 0.1% depth of shade, 75% brilliant blue, which is a different blue than the national blue, 20% magenta, and 5% black. So I've toned down the blue, or made it a little more reddish blue, I guess, with the magenta, and then toned it down with black. So these are ways that you can make colors by just choosing one color like blue to work with. Here is more of a turquoise color. The dye color was called Sea Breeze. Okay, that's really bright for me. But I took 45% of this color and added 50% of the national blue and a little bit of black, and now I have a nice blue that would be nice to work with, and I can make different shades of that same blue. Here is 50% Sea Breeze and 50% of the national blue, combined in a light value or a light depth of shade of 0.05%, and you get a nice blue that way. Here is a dye called Grasshopper. This is at 1.5%, so it's pretty deep color of it. Pretty, it looks like the color on the dye yarn chart. But when you dilute it down, or just use a wee bit of it when you're dyeing your yarn, you get a kind of a greenish yellow, citrusy color, which is something you might use. And then you go even lighter than that, and you get this nice pale yellow. So this gives you some idea of well, it might help you in deciding which dye colors to use and how to use them. And if I was starting over again, that's what I would do. I would just choose some colors that appeal to me and explore the different values, different shades of using that color, and then toning it down with a nearby color or the opposite color or black.